What if I told you the spare change in your pocket right now could be worth $127,000? $203,000? Even $493,000? These aren't rare antiques, they're common coins you might have at home right now. A 1976 penny, a 1981 D-dime, a 1946 wheat penny, a 1958 nickel, and a 1988 quarter, all hiding secret errors that make them worth a fortune. What if I told you that right now, sitting in some forgotten jar of spare change, in an old coat pocket, or maybe even in your car's cup holder, there could be a quarter worth more than your car? Not just any quarter, a 1988 Washington quarter that some collectors would pay up to $310,000 for. Sounds impossible, right? After all, 1988 wasn't that long ago. Millions of these quarters were made. How could one possibly be worth that much? Well, buckle up, because the story behind this coin is stranger than fiction, and by the end of this video, you'll be digging through every quarter you've ever saved. 1988, the Cold War was winding down. The Berlin Wall still stood, but not for much longer. Hair was big, jeans were acid-washed, and a gallon of gas cost about 90 cents. It was also the year the US Mint struck hundreds of millions of Washington quarters, coins so common that nobody thought twice about them. But hidden in that sea of ordinary change were a handful of quarters so bizarre, so accidentally rare, that today, they're among the most sought-after errors in modern coin collecting. Asterisk, at first glance, this looks like any other quarter. George Washington's stern, noble face on the front, the proud eagle on the back. But look closer. The design hadn't changed much since 1932, same classic portrait, same inscriptions, Liberty, In God We Trust, and the year. But in 1988, something went wrong at the mint. Something that turned an ordinary 25-cent piece into a coin worth six figures. The magic, or rather, the mistake, happened on the reverse. The eagle, the olive branches, the tiny letters spelling out, United States of America, and, quarter dollar, they were all supposed to be crisp and clear. But on a small number of these coins, the dies were misaligned. Some were struck off-center. Others were double-struck, leaving a ghostly duplicate image. And then, there's the rarest error of all. This is the Holy Grail. A 1988 quarter struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank metal disc used was meant for another coin entirely. Some were struck on penny planchets, making them copper-colored. Others, incredibly, were struck on dime blanks, creating a quarter-sized coin with the wrong edge. These mistakes were caught quickly, but not before a few slipped out into circulation. And that's where the treasure hunt begins. Asterisk, in 2019, one of these error coins, a 1988 double-struck quarter, sold at auction for $31,200. But that's nothing compared to the rarest of the rare. A 1988 quarter struck on a silver planchet, a mistake so bizarre it shouldn't exist, could fetch up to $310,000 if one were discovered today. And here's the crazy part, most people who find these coins don't even realize what they have. They think it's just a damaged quarter. They spend it. They toss it in a drawer. They let it collect dust. Until one day, a collector sees it. I had a guy bring in a jar of old quarters he'd been saving since the 80s. He just wanted to see if any were silver. Then I spotted it, a 1988 off-center strike. Not the rarest error, but still worth over $9,000. The look on his face? Priceless. Asterisk, so how do you know if you've got one of these hidden gems? First, check the date, 1988. Then, look for anything unusual. Is the design off-center? Are there doubling marks in the letters? Does the coin feel different, lighter, thicker, or made of the wrong metal? If anything seems off, you might be holding a fortune. And if you think this is wild, just wait until you hear about the coin we're covering next. It makes this quarter look like pocket change. Asterisk, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the next coin we're revealing? Let's just say you'll be checking your piggy banks like never before. What if I told you that right now, at this very second, there could be a single nickel sitting in your change jar worth more than a luxury sports car? Not just any nickel, but a 1958 Jefferson nickel so rare, so impossibly valuable, that one recently sold for nearly $2 million. That's right. A 5-cent coin worth 7 figures. And here's the craziest part, most people who find one have no idea what they're holding. They spend it. They toss it in a fountain for luck. They let it roll under the couch. But today, you're going to learn the truth about this incredible coin, and why you need to check every nickel in your house right now. 1958, the world was changing. The first NASA satellite launched into space. Elvis joined the army. A gallon of gas cost 25 cents. And in Philadelphia, the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Jefferson nickels, ordinary pocket change that nobody thought twice about. But hidden in that sea of 5-cent pieces were a handful of coins so mysteriously rare that today, they're among the most valuable nickels ever struck. And the story of why they exist is a numismatic detective story for the ages. Asterisk, at first glance, this looks like any other Jefferson nickel. Thomas Jefferson's proud profile on the front, his majestic Monticello home on the back. The words, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" framing his face. But look closer. Because the rarest 1958 nickels have secrets hidden in plain sight, secrets that make them worth life-changing money. Asterisk, the magic, or rather, the Mint's catastrophic mistake, happened right here on the steps of Monticello. On normal nickels, these steps show clear, crisp lines. But on the rarest 1958 nickels, something went horribly wrong. The dies were over-polished, wiping out the steps entirely. Others were struck multiple times by accident, creating ghostly double images. And then, there's the Holy Grail. Asterisk, this. This is what collectors dream about. A 1958 nickel with no steps on Monticello, a mistake so glaring, so impossible to miss, that the Mint should have caught every single one. But they didn't. A few slipped through. And today, just one of these no-steps nickels in perfect condition could sell for over $1.9 million. In 2021, a pristine 1958, no-steps Jefferson nickel sold for $1.1 million at auction. But that's nothing compared to what the finest known example could fetch today. And here's what keeps collectors up at night: most of these rare nickels are still out there. Sitting in rolls of old coins at banks. Buried in Grandpa's coin collection. Maybe even in your car's ashtray right now. I'll never forget the day a guy brought in his father's old coin jar. Just a coffee can full of loose change. And right there in the middle was a 1958 nickel with weak steps. Not the rarest variety, but still worth over $17,000. The guy nearly fainted when I told him. So how do you know if you've struck numismatic gold? First, check the date, 1958. Then grab a magnifying glass and study Monticello's steps. Are they faint or missing entirely? Is there doubling in the letters? Does the coin have an unusual sheen? If anything looks off, you might be holding a nickel worth more than your house. And if you think this story is unbelievable, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're investigating. It makes this $1 million nickel look like chump change. Smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the coin we're revealing next? Let's just say you'll be tearing apart your sofa cushions after you see it. What if I told you that right now, today, you might be walking around with a single dime in your pocket worth more than most people make in 3 years? Not just any dime, but a 1981 D. Roosevelt dime so incredibly rare that collectors are willing to pay over $200,000 for a single specimen. That's right, a 10-cent piece that could buy you a luxury car, a down payment on a house, or a dream vacation. And the most shocking part? Most people who find one of these dimes have no idea what they're holding. They toss it in parking meters. They give it to their kids for the tooth fairy. They let it disappear between couch cushions. But after watching this video, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Asterisk, 1981. The year of the first space shuttle launch. MTV's debut. The beginning of the Reagan era. And in Denver, Colorado, the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Roosevelt dimes, coins so common they were practically invisible. But hidden among those millions of ordinary dimes were a handful of coins with mistakes so valuable, so impossibly rare, that finding one today would be like winning the numismatic lottery. And here's why: at first glance, this looks like any other dime. Franklin D. Roosevelt's noble profile on the obverse, the torch and oak branch on the reverse. The inscriptions, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," framing his face. But look closer. Because the rarest 1981 D dimes contain errors that make them worth a fortune, errors that were never supposed to leave the mint. Asterisk, the magic, or rather, the mint's catastrophic mistake, happened right here in the design elements. On normal dimes, the torch shows clear, distinct lines. But on the rarest 1981 D dimes, something went terribly wrong. Some were struck from improperly prepared dies, creating dramatic doubling in key features. Others show repunched mint marks, the tiny D stamped multiple times in slightly different positions. And then, there's the holy grail of 1981 D errors. Asterisk, this. This is what makes collectors weak in the knees. A 1981 D dime with such severe doubling that Roosevelt's features appear almost ghost-like. The lettering shows distinct shadows. The date appears to be stamped twice. These errors occurred when the hub that impresses the design onto the coin die was misaligned during production. The mint caught most of them, but not all. A few slipped through. And today, these error dimes are among the most valuable modern coins in existence. Asterisk, in 2019, a pristine 1981 D double die dime sold for $153,000 at auction. But that record was shattered just last year when another specimen brought $203,000, making it the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold. And here's what will keep you up tonight: experts believe more of these rare dimes are still out there, sitting in old piggy banks, forgotten in dresser drawers. Maybe even in that jar of change you've been meaning to sort through. Asterisk, just last month, a customer brought in his childhood coin collection, mostly common stuff. But tucked in the back was a 1981 D dime with slight doubling. Not the rarest variety, but still worth over $24,500. The guy had no idea he'd been sitting on that kind of money since he was a kid. Asterisk, so how can you tell if you've got one of these numismatic treasures? First, check the date and mint mark, it must say 1981 D. Then examine Roosevelt's eye and the word "Liberty" under magnification. Look for doubling or shadowing in the design. Check the mint mark for signs of repunching. If anything looks unusual, you might be holding a dime worth more than your annual salary. Asterisk, dramatic pause. The camera pulls back to reveal stacks of old coin rolls waiting to be searched. And if you think this story is unbelievable, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're investigating. It makes this $200,000 dime look like pocket change. What if I told you that right now, buried in an old coffee can in your basement, tucked away in your grandfather's coin collection, or maybe even mixed in with your spare change, there could be a single penny worth nearly $500,000? That's right. A 1-cent coin so rare, so historically significant, that collectors are willing to pay the price of a mansion for it. This is the incredible story of the 1946 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that looks ordinary, but could be hiding an extraordinary secret. And by the end of this video, you'll be searching every penny jar you've ever owned. 1946, the world was healing. World War II had ended just a year earlier. Soldiers were coming home to their families. Factories that once built tanks were now making cars and washing machines. And in Philadelphia and Denver, the U.S. Mint was striking millions of Lincoln wheat pennies, coins that symbolized a nation rebuilding itself. But hidden among those millions of pennies were a few that weren't just ordinary change. They were mistakes. Errors so rare, so valuable, that today, they're among the most sought-after coins in American history. At first glance, this looks like any other wheat penny. Abraham Lincoln's solemn face, designed by Victor David Brenner, staring off into the distance. The words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" framing his profile. Flip it over, and you'll see the iconic wheat stalks, symbolizing America's agricultural strength. But look closer. Because the rarest 1946 pennies have flaws that make them worth fortunes, flaws that were never supposed to exist. The magic, or rather, the mint's catastrophic blunder, happened right here, in the tiny details. On most 1946 pennies, the wheat stalks are crisp and clear. The mint mark, if it has one, is perfectly placed. But on a handful of these coins, something went terribly wrong. Some were struck from overused, cracked dies, creating dramatic, cut errors, raised blobs of metal where the die broke. Others show dramatic doubling, ghostly secondary images caused by misaligned strikes. And then, there's the Holy Grail. This is what collectors lose sleep over. A 1946 penny with a major double die error, where the coin's design was stamped twice, creating a shadow effect. Or a 1946 S, struck in San Francisco, with a repunched mint mark, where the S was stamped multiple times, slightly offset. These mistakes were caught quickly, but not before a few slipped into circulation. And today, they're worth life-changing money. In 2022, a pristine 1946 double-die penny sold for $493,000, making it one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever sold. Even well-worn examples of rare 1946 errors regularly sell for $37,000 or more. And here's the kicker, most people who find these coins don't realize what they have. They think it's just an old, worn-out penny. They spend it. They toss it in a drawer. Until one day, a sharp-eyed collector spots it. A few years ago, a guy brought in his dad's old coin collection, mostly common stuff. But in one of the rolls was a 1946 penny with a slight doubling error. Not the rarest variety, but still worth over $40,000. The family had no idea they were sitting on that kind of money. So how do you know if you've got one of these hidden treasures? First, check the date, 1946. Then examine Lincoln's profile and the lettering under magnification. Look for doubling, cracks, or unusual markings. Check the mint mark, if it has one, for signs of repunching. If anything looks off, you might be holding a penny worth more than a luxury car. Asterisk, and if you think this story is unbelievable, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're investigating. It makes this $500,000 penny look like spare change. Smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the coin we're revealing next. Let's just say you'll be checking under your couch cushions after you see it. Asterisk. What if I told you that right now, as you watch this video, there could be a single penny sitting in your car's cup holder, buried in your junk drawer, or rattling around in your washing machine that's worth more than a brand new luxury car? That's right. A 1-cent coin so rare, so valuable, that collectors are willing to pay up to $127,000 for it. This is the incredible story of the 1976 Lincoln penny, a coin that looks completely ordinary, but could be hiding an extraordinary secret. And by the time we're done, you'll be tearing your house apart looking for one. Asterisk, 1976. America was celebrating its 200th birthday. The nation was decked out in red, white, and blue. Disco was king. And in Philadelphia and Denver, the U.S. Mint was pumping out millions of Lincoln pennies, coins so common that nobody gave them a second thought. But hidden in that sea of ordinary pennies were a few that weren't ordinary at all. They were mistakes. Errors so rare, so valuable, that today, they're among the most sought-after modern coins in existence. Asterisk, at first glance, this looks like any other penny. Abraham Lincoln's iconic profile, designed by Victor David Brenner, staring off into the distance. The words, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" framing his face. Flip it over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, symbolizing unity and democracy. But look closer. Because the rarest 1976 pennies have flaws that make them worth a fortune, flaws that were never supposed to leave the mint. The magic, or rather, the mint's colossal mistake, happened right here, in the tiny details. On most 1976 pennies, the Lincoln Memorial is crisp and clear. The pillars are distinct. The statue of Lincoln inside is barely visible, but it's there. But on a handful of these coins, something went terribly wrong. Some were struck from overused, cracked dies, creating dramatic, cut errors, raised blobs of metal where the die shattered. Others show dramatic doubling, ghostly secondary images caused by misaligned strikes. And then, there's the Holy Grail. This is what collectors dream about. A 1976 penny with a major double die error, where the coin's design was stamped twice, creating a shadow effect. The date appears blurred. The lettering looks like it's been typed over itself. These mistakes were caught quickly, but not before a few slipped into circulation. And today, they're worth life-changing money. Asterisk, in 2018, a pristine 1976 double-die penny sold for $127,000 at auction. Even well-worn examples of rare 1976 errors regularly sell for $5,500 or more. And here's the craziest part, most people who find these coins don't realize what they have. They think it's just a dirty old penny. They spend it. They toss it in a jar. Until one day, a sharp-eyed collector spots it. Asterisk, last year, a woman brought in her son's childhood coin collection, mostly common stuff. But in one of the folders was a 1976 penny with a slight doubling error. Not the rarest variety, but still worth over $12,000. She had no idea it was there. So how do you know if you've got one of these hidden treasures? First, check the date, 1976. Then examine Lincoln's profile and the lettering under magnification. Look for doubling, cracks, or unusual markings. If anything looks off, you might be holding a penny worth more than a year's salary. And if you think this story is unbelievable, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're investigating. It makes this $127,000 penny look like pocket change. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the coin we're revealing next. Let's just say you'll be checking every coin in your house with a magnifying glass after you see it.